hearing about FIRA and YOLO. We are so excited for this year's event. We also are so thrilled that growers will be free, and we're going to be working over the next few months to make sure that we fill this space with growers and all the stakeholders to really push ag innovation in California. We've got a few stragglers in the back. I'm going to give them a minute. So welcome to the Vine Connect YOLO. We've been hosting these Connect events up and down the state, and the goal is really to bring value to regional stakeholders. So in Merced, we heard that growers and our UC partners were really interested in groundwater recharge. We put an event together around groundwater recharge and brought some startups in there. In Monterey, there was a lot of interest in workforce. What is our current workforce needs related to ag innovation? And then how do we think about what are the needs of workforce in 5 to 10 years? And let's bring community colleges and higher education together around that. Did that event a few weeks ago, and then here we are in YOLO, and we thought, what better way to really kick off FIRA 2024 in this region than to bring together our autonomous partners and other stakeholders to talk about really what is the return on implementation, and how are growers thinking about that, how are our associations thinking about that, how are the startups themselves thinking about that. So we are going to be very cognizant of your time. I run a tight ship, so if you've ever been to one of our events, you know that you're getting in early and you're getting out early. So to kick us off and to really moderate the discussion on return, I would like to introduce you to Gabe Youtsey, Chief Innovation Officer at UC A&R and founder of the Vine.
Hello, me again. So just a little more, let's see here. Do I have a way to click the slides forward? Okay, yeah, perfect. Next slide. So just a few brief words about the Vine. Really, our program is aimed at technology commercialization, workforce development, and economic development, building innovation economies around California agriculture. And I live and work out of this region, so we do it right here, but also in Fresno, in the Central Coast region, in Southern California. And really, we're building connections beyond that, too. So the Vine Network is really a connection of different partners and leaders that are supporting those three objectives: tech commercialization, workforce development, economic development. So we do that largely in the Central Valley, the Central Coast, Southern California, a range of partners from academia, community colleges, CSU system, UC system, some key industry players, venture capital partners, and it's only growing and growing and growing. We're connected globally, so we are a conduit to bring collaborators from all over the world to California, and to bring innovations from California all over the world to grow and scale those companies and those solutions. So we're increasingly trying to be a global innovation citizen in the food and agriculture economy. Our core strategy are connect, build, and grow. So, without further ado, let's welcome up our panelists to just keep this all moving. So, you heard already from Ben Palone from Western Growers. Come on up, Ben. You can hold applause at the end when they get here. Zach Bagley, the director of the California Tomato Research Board. Zach, come on up. Alon Ascher from Blue White, and David Ogilvie of Wilson Vineyards. Please welcome our panel. Okay, mic's on, everybody? Good. All right, well, welcome all of you. So I'm going to start by just asking you to give sort of just a brief introduction and background about yourselves and your work. Zach, we'll start with you.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Zach Bagley. I'm the managing director of the California Tomato Research Institute. So if you're familiar with marketing orders or commodity boards, we are the research commodity board for processing tomatoes here in the state of California. So we work with the 250 to 280 growers of processing tomatoes annually. Those growers producing about a third of the global production of your ketchup, paste, salsas, canned products, to understand their research needs and to work with UCANR and other research institutions in funding the solutions and the answers to those challenges that growers have in the field. So very interested in the conversation this morning, very excited about the opportunities in ag tech in tomatoes. That's cultivation and transplanting that we still need a lot of help with. Over the last several years, I've interacted with Western growers and with Gabe and the Vine and other groups around these questions. There's still a lot more questions than answers, but just in the last 7 years that I've worked in this space, a lot of those answers have come. So exciting time, exciting space. Thank you.
Keep going down the list. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. My name is Alon Ascher. I'm the Chief Business Officer of Blue White. Blue White is an autonomous technology company. My background is from the tech side. I spent many years developing autonomous systems for the Israeli Air Force. I'm a system engineer and a reserve pilot. And we happily found ourselves leveraging autonomy in ag, especially in permanent crops, and providing solutions basically for growers to utilize their equipment and create better ability to produce food. The main activities are around multiple tasks, spraying, mowing, disking, and leveraging both the equipment and the implements that the growers have to have better productivity, a higher quality and precision throughout the farm, and very importantly and underrated, improved safety for the employees and overall for the business.
Hello everyone, my name is David Ogilvie. I'm a fourth generation farmer from my family farm in Clarksburg, about 30 minutes from here. Got a Clarksburg fan back here, nice to see. We grow a lot of Chenin Blanc, but yeah, fourth generation farmer, been growing wine grapes since the late 60s, and I came back to my family's farm in 2014 and quickly transitioned everything into being certified sustainable. And part of that, being sustainable, is keeping the farm going. And with the rise in labor costs and all the inputs that go into farming have increased, and so I quickly started looking at ways to reduce our input costs, and ag tech has definitely helped me there. We do use an autonomous tractor now through Kingman Ag that has been working wonderfully. We've been using it for 2 years and look forward to talking about that and any questions. Thanks.
Hello again, Ben Palone from Western Growers. Western Growers is a trade association with 2,200 plus members of all growers and farmers in the fruit, nut, and vegetable industry. And I represent the innovation and technology side under Walt Duflock. I'm Senior Director of Automation and Commercialization. I work specifically with startups, with growers, and with VC firms in order to solve our membership's problems, which is labor crisis through automation.
Well, thank you all for the introduction. Why don't you start by explaining either your technology a little bit more for Blue White, or technology you as a farmer or your members are interested in. Just talk about some of the technologies. It doesn't have to be, it could be really anything. What are you excited about? What are you looking forward to coming? And what are you using now? So why don't you start as the farmer, directly farming first. You can go.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I'm using an autonomous tractor, and I think that autonomous tractors are kind of the next stage. I see it as the next stage of adoption. We had the early adopters, and I think that and I may be kind of on that side, but I mean, autonomous tractors is not new in the Midwest, from what I understand, but definitely in precision agriculture and in
Specialty.
vineyard farming for sure. So permanent crop farming. So it's something that it was kind of one of those big jumps to get into, but now that we're there, it's proving to be very useful, and there's nothing like waking up in the morning and going out and seeing your vineyard all mowed, and you didn't have a man driving a tractor all night. I mean, it is really wild. And when it first happened, I just couldn't believe it and thought, okay, well, now what else can I do? And we've pushed it and kind of taken 2 steps forward, a step back. We had some mistakes, but it's been really good working with the designer, Connor Kingman of Kingman Ag, and it's been a partnership where when a mistake happened and we took out, a whole row of vines, we worked together on a solution. And when we're adopting these technologies, we have to remember it's not going to be perfect the first time. And I really appreciate Connor's willingness to keep going at it, and I know that he appreciates my willingness to accept failure as a way to make the future better in autonomy. So I'm the next level, the next things that I'm interested in is kind of looking at how else can I use autonomous tractors during harvest, where and Connor is working on that. Kingman Ag is working on that, where the tractor is moving alongside our grape harvester on its own without a driver, and then once it's full, the gondola is full of machine harvested grapes, it knows to go to the unloading section area where a driver then hops on and does the unloading. So, and then sends it back to the vineyard. So that's kind of like the next step for us. I'm also very much interested in the weed control with autonomous instruments or ag tech. It was interesting seeing the machine outside. There's weed seeker. There's saving inputs that way. We're using less chemical. That'd be great. So
Great. Zach, why don't you talk about that from the tomato perspective? You and I have had lots of good conversations about applying technology, and so why don't you add to that?
Yeah, thank you, Gabe. So from the tomato side, like I mentioned, our biggest challenges from an automation perspective are cultivation. So getting those weeds out of the field. We saw some options there this morning. Great to see them here in Woodland. I did not mention I'm based in Woodland. I live in Woodland, so excited that FIRA is going to be here this year. But cultivation is one of these major kind of what's the next step to get to automation, large cost in our fields. And then the other thing is transplanting. So how do we get from finger planters, so one person with their hand placing these individual transplants, or 100% transplants at this point in the industry, where they need to go, to a crew of 30 people versus a crew of 3 people. So the step that we're taking as a research institute at this point in these 2 areas is looking not at how can we develop machines internally for this. We're the largest tomato production area in the world, which we love to talk about, but small number of growers, total addressable market for equipment companies, relatively small compared to other crops and other opportunities. So how do we get technologies that are close enough and compare and contrast them in the field, in processing tomato fields, to understand what David referenced there of hey, it's a back and forth. You go 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Understanding these challenges. Yes, we have a labor cost and availability issue, but the last time we automated something was the harvest, and that happened 70 years ago. Collaboration between UC Davis breeders, UC Davis ag engineers, and growers to bring on that automation. But the challenge there and why it happened from 100% hand harvest to 100% mechanized harvest within 3 years in the 1950s was because a labor program, the Bracero program, was completely going away. The challenge today for California processing tomato growers in both the space of transplanting and cultivation is immediate. Sometimes your crews don't show up to plant your field, but it's also not that, it's not happening today. So we still have time for this back and forth, but it's also a major problem, a major cost. The cost of total cost of operating an acre of tomatoes annually is something like $5,000 to $5,500 a year. This is not a secret. UC Davis publishes cost studies for all of these crops that we're talking about. The cost of both of these activities is somewhere between $200 and $400 per acre per activity. So it's not the and I do love the cost study that Western growers put together for carbon robotics so that growers can understand what are the costs, what's the opportunity. It's not the scale of leafy greens in either of these problems, but it's a big enough challenge that our growers are interested in comparing the relevant technologies and taking that next step of getting them into the field. On the side of transplanting, and this is the last thing I'll say before I hand over the mic, there are 3 different options, and growers have actively purchased those options for transplanters and are using them. This is not just test cases, this is real cases of use in the field. Thank you.
Alon, why don't you comment as a technology innovator and how, what problems you're solving. And obviously you're excited about your technology, but tell us why you're excited about it, why it's different, and what problems that we really are addressing top of mind for the growers.
Perfect. So we look at this on 3 layers. First layer would be the autonomy, the navigation side of things. Second would be the implement itself, the execution of the task. And third is the data and the user interface. Now, first of all, even on the first layer, I'm super excited about, I saw this transition from 2 decades ago where to have a robot similar like this in a decent amount of performance and ability to navigate without GPS and on a really safe manner, it would cost like 10 to 30 times more. So the reduction of cost from the sensor level, from the computer level, the availability of more open source models really assists to improve performance and reducing cost dramatically. This is one side. The second side is on safety. You look on the urban mobility companies like Google and General Motors spent billions of dollars on trying to improve from 99.9 to 99.99999% of safety, and it costs billion. And to some extent, we here in ag, we enjoy part of those investments, like the technology being matured, knowledge being shared, and bring us to adequate and far better than a typical employee level of safety that could be implemented today. So a robot that maybe cost $1 million a decade ago, now for a reasonable cost that grower can afford, can drive up and down the rows of the orchard. So now we are driving up and down safely. What we're doing with the implements, okay, it's still pretty dumb to implement. So there is this whole era, and you see here many companies that presented here in the back how we're reinventing what an implement should be. A smart sprayer, a high accuracy sprayer, a UV pest control device, and things like that, that really assist us to think differently, much more innovatively about, okay, now I have a supercomputer, connected supercomputer in the farm, how can I farm better? How can I farm more efficiently? We figure out a couple of ways to leverage, for example, the sensors that we already have to recognize and analyze the trees, canopies, volume, density, and use this as a additional layer to execute a much accurate spray and reduce dramatically the input and the water, the chemical and the water costs. So this implement layer is also very exciting, and every year we see here more and more innovations. And third, of course, is the data and the user interface with this technology. Roughly, largely saying, this is the first time the farm being connected. Before you start to have all these robots, all these sensors in the farm, it's basically an offline business. You have no idea what's going on. And all of a sudden, we're generating together so much new information, and we have also ability to use it and to do the learning, see where we have inefficiencies, how we can execute things better. So and we're just in the beginning of this journey, looking at, I'm sure most of you know, and all this amazing innovation now happening with generative AI, and all the open AI and ChatGPT kind of solutions. They're all being based on tremendous amount of data that they can learn, manipulate, and give you better results. So now we're beginning to feed in all this information from the field, all this information from those devices, so we can interact in the future much more naturally with the robot and ask him question and ask the platform question, hey, how should I run this shift? I don't necessarily need to, every farm is different, every farm has different techniques, but now everything is logged. I have information about my couple of recent years of operation, shared knowledge from other farms and practices. I can ask the robot in a live chat of, hey, how should I run the shift? How should I plant my next vineyard better? So I'm really excited on those three elements. We see dramatic advantage in all of them. So really looking forward for the upcoming years.
Ben, why don't you pick up on that? I mean, I know for a fact that Western Growers is leading the charge on automation and biologicals. Expand on those, and what other areas of technology, say more about those, and then add anything else where you guys are taking really a lead role in a lot of this. What are you most excited about, and what are you focused on?
Yeah, thanks, Gabe. So we've touched on a lot of the crops here in kind of Central Valley and up here in Davis and Woodland area, and I'll focus a little bit more on the leafy green sides, at least for stuff that I've seen and stuff that's working. And we have one grower here represented today from the leafy green side. We've got Mark Mason from Nature's Reward. Thanks for coming, Mark. Mark is a huge proponent of ag tech. Every time I get something that they say, hey, I want to go try this, need to go catch data, Mark is the first person I usually call. What we're seeing a lot of in these spaces, and especially down in the Salinas Valley area, is the weeding and thinning, precision spraying, weed abatement. Those technologies are being implemented by growers, and they're being used every single day. If you drive through the Salinas Valley, you'll see a FarmWise machine, you'll see eco-robotics, you will see carbon robotics, Stout, and others as a normal practice. And I would say, people ask me, well, is weeding and cultivating, smart cultivating done? And I say, no, absolutely not. Zach has said that tomatoes is still something that still needs to be figured out on that side. But as far as technology that's currently implemented and working well today in Salinas Valley and those leafy greens, high value veg crops, weeding and thinning seems to be doing really well. It hasn't taken it's not completely done yet. There are still a lot of different technologies still needing to be implemented. Carbon robotics is a great example of a new technology that's come in. It's the first time that laser weeding and lasers have ever been used in commercial industrial crops. And it's a very expensive machine, but it does provide a benefit. And maybe we'll get into the case study in a minute, but as far as some of the other things that we're seeing and some of the things that are really, what do we push for from the Western Growers innovation side, we're pushing on the innovation side that really matters to our grower membership. And as autonomous tractors and autonomy has taken a little bit of a back seat previously, we're starting to push that a little bit more forward because we definitely see where that can provide operator safety. You think about spray rigs running through the field. It definitely autonomy provides a huge amount of benefit to keep the operators safe and move operators out of the cab where they're predominantly running at night, and half the time they're watching something on their phone as they're driving anyways in the middle of the night, and they have to wear a full Tyvek suit and respirator and things of the sort. So autonomy is something we're at Western Growers are extremely excited about pushing forward. And some other things are what the industry is actually needing is Mark will tell me every single time I call him is harvest for the specialty leafy greens sector. We're still pushing really hard with that, with our global automation harvest initiative. And there are some people starting to get there. They're still in that stealth mode yet, but they're starting to get there. And we'll look to see what happens this summer if there's anyone coming to try out. But I'll stop with the train.
All right, well, let's get to... Testing. Oh, there we go. Let's get to the meat of the discussion about return on investment. That's the title of our panel topic, but I think actually Hannah said return on innovation. Actually, I like that too. Yeah, because it actually is true, because we usually think of ROI in terms of dollars, and of course it is that, and I'm expecting you all to hit on the ROI for dollars part, but there's also, as you guys have alluded to, return on investment / innovation for safety and the safety benefits, for the environmental benefits that autonomous solutions can provide. We've seen, California tomato industry is an example of how automation for harvest has basically kept the industry alive here and transformed it for the last 50 plus years. But just talk a little bit about how you think about return on investment or return on innovation, and for both the technologies that's very emergent that you're trying out, like autonomous tractors in your fields, or things that have been around and you're looking for that transformation. Like, how are you thinking about it, both in terms of dollars and cents, but other impacts as well? And go ahead and take that in order that you wish. Just speak up.
Yeah, return on investment is obviously important. It's something we look at each time. One of the hardest things with these technologies, these new technologies, when they get so specified, everyone wants something to help harvest, but I can't afford to spend a whole lot of money on a piece of equipment that sits in the shed for 11 months out of the year, right? So I want to look at what else can I use this for? And beyond, like we said, the environment and just financial, time, anything that can help us farm more acres with less people or less implements even will help. We're in a stage where the average age of the California farmer is approaching 60 years old. And a lot of the next generation of these farming families are not going into farming. And so, especially in my community in Clarksburg, I see these families whose kids are in a completely different industry. They're not going to come back to the farm, and what's going to happen to that land? And they're growing tomatoes, they're growing wheat, alfalfa. Crops that our communities need, our country needs. So we need to figure out how to farm those acres, but still hit the margins that we need to stay sustainable and stay in business. So time is a big issue. I'll leave it at that, and if something else pops in my head, I'll mention it.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So you just heard it. I hear it resoundingly all day long. Cost, utility, and time. Those are the three main factors I hear all day long from a grower's perspective, from the membership that we represent. Yeah, it's cool and it looks cool. I can drive by the highway and look at that spaceship out there looking thing in the field, but it has to provide a return and it has to make me money. That is the underlying theme you will hear from every single grower. Walt Duflock, obviously, you've heard that and said we need to provide this case study sector here that we do at Western Growers in order to prove this to the membership. And the first case study we have released is carbon robotics. And really the theme here is that this is not a case study that is put out by the startup. It's not a case study that's put out by anybody except us at Western Growers that is deeply involved in this space. So this is an unbiased third-party review of these technologies from a grower who's had, what qualifies to be run a case study is a technology that's been run solely by a grower for over a year or one season. We talk with the grower, we get all the financial data, how many acres have you run, what's the cost of the machine, what's the loaded cost of your operators, do you run 2 shifts, 3 shifts, 1 shift? What are all those factors? You boil all that down into what every grower is looking for. Cost per acre, cost per clamshell, cost per something. So you boil all that down into this cost per acre, and then you just do the analysis from historical data. Our board members are some of the most progressive people in this space, and they allowed me to gather their data and publish that and say, this is what my historical weeding costs are for high density organic leafy greens, up to $1,200 an acre, $1,800 an acre for hand weeding, which is the only thing that can be used in some of these crops. And then using a laser weeder, that combined cost afterwards is around $530, $600 an acre, which is a huge benefit. You call it, $400, $500, $600 per acre savings with using this. And the goal of the case study effort for Western Growers is to publish this information out there so you can have the growers that sit on the outside edge that say, I'm not going to be the first one to buy this because I don't know if I have $1.5 million and I don't know if I could run all the acreage to justify it. But they can look at all the data and say, okay, now I know all the data and I can make this from a data-driven perspective. And then some of the other byproducts from that are startups are going to start knowing how they're going to be judged. They understand that yes, they're providing a value and what's their true value proposition is, but startups need to understand that if I'm going to come in as a weeding robot, you're not going to remove 100% of the weeding labor. That's just not going to happen. We have never seen that today, talking on the leafy green side. So, you have to come up with this ROI calculator. And when you're a startup, I've been there a couple times, you come up with this ROI calculator, you go talk to growers, and you say, oh, you're going to get your payback in 2 months. You get this technology, 3 months later, it's going to pay for itself. Grower obviously skeptical, and the startup just doesn't necessarily know all the different things that the grower does about all the different inputs. So, this is the other side of this with this initiative for case studies, is to provide that third-party unbiased opinion with all of the inputs included, so that way everyone can make the best decisions.
I'd just like to add to that exact thing. I don't know how many times I've seen some really cool technology on a trade show floor, and I'm really excited about it, and then it gets to the vineyard, and the person who develops it lives and works, the tech lab is in the Bay Area or Davis or Woodland, and then they get it out onto the farm and it just doesn't work because you don't have either cell reception or good Wi-Fi or something. So there's the ROI of the piece of equipment that is based on it working 100% of the time. And then you get it out in the vineyard and you realize, well, in order to achieve that ROI, I need to invest elsewhere in getting Wi-Fi over my whole ranch and all these other add-ons, which is amazing to actually have that. If you do, I don't. I couldn't invest in that yet, but someday maybe. But yeah, there's there's the ROI of the implement, but then there's the ROI of all the other things you need to add on to make that work 100% of the time.
So yeah, David has just brought up the, does it work? And I think in a space like processing tomatoes, this brings up an interesting dynamic. ROI is going to be the most important first thing. Does it pay for itself? Maybe the first thing is, does it work? Can I see it work in the field? Am I a grower that once, here's what's happening, does it do the same job? But this question of, does it do the same job, at least in our space, is really where we're challenged. We've got the ROI of these transplanters, we've got the ROI, we're working on them for cultivators, but there is a trade-off, and in our space, especially here in California, where our costs are so high, whether you're talking about regulatory or cost of irrigation and cost of water, we're thinking about, where are we differentiated? We're differentiated on yield and on quality. And if any of these technologies that reduce our cost take away yield or take away some of our quality, then we're taking away those differentiating things that keep us in business and keep us going as a commodity crop globally. So as these startup companies come up with these technologies, put the ROI calculations together, make it do the job in the field, but how is it going to perform against humans doing that job? And that's a high barrier to entry. I understand that, but how is it going to be different? And is it so different that you're taking down that quality or you're reducing yield? The other thing I'd say, how many people in this room listen to the podcast Modern Acre? Yeah, so great representation there. So Tim and Tyler Nuss, they've done a couple hundred episodes at this point. Tim is on my board. I'm bringing him up because he said this publicly on a podcast, so I'm comfortable sharing it. But they've interviewed hundreds of startups. The one piece of technology they're using on their tomato operation starting this year for automation is finger weeders. If any of you are familiar with this technology, it's the $12,000 answer to the $1.5 million carbon robotics robot that for something on large acres and lower cost per acre is actually effective. So there's going to be this huge kind of range of here's the technology options, what's needed on these individual farms.
So I would like to... One?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. You asked about return on innovation. I think, and this is where we should start, because these technologies are not luxury technology to improve margins and profits. These technologies become necessity to survive. They become necessity to build a resilient business. 3, 5, 7, 10 years from now. The current trends are no one gonna work in the farm. Maybe David, in your farm is different. You have this really nice vineyard and everything. But no one gonna work in the farms. We can't find the people. We don't have them now, and in the future it's only gonna get worse. We can't afford them because the inflation and cost. And if we can afford them, it's really hard to make sure they're maintaining a really good job. Even the best tractor driver I know, in his 9 and 10 and 11 working hour in the same shift, is doing pretty shitty job. So this technology become a necessity. So the return on innovation, every grower, every business owner should ask himself, how can I be in business in 5 years from now with the current trends? Labor shortage, rising cost, inputs cost, etc., etc. Now, the question about return on investment, so now I put my money in, how it's going to look like, of course, the typical equation of productivity, doing more with less, okay? First of all, look at the revenues, how we can farm more. okay? How we can, and this technology definitely give us a lot of possibilities to do more, to farm more acres, to increase the quality that you mentioned, get higher dollar because of whether it's organic or we're using additional practices, and with less resources, less people needed in the shift. You're 100% right. It's not about 0%, labor farm. It's not. It's about minimal, the minimal that I need to run the operation correctly. So minimal amount of people, minimal amount of chemicals, minimal amount of also of equipment. So I can utilize the assets that I already have, people and machines, to the maximum. And this is where the ROI should be focused on. Every farm is a bit different. So we do need to have this understanding. And I think what you mentioned, Ben, on the calculation and working together and making sure there's clear set of expectations between the technology vendor and the customers related to this operation. Okay, it's not a cookie cutter that if it works for you, 100% you're going to get the same value in every location. And looking at the adoption curve, there is adoption curve even in the farm. The value on day one is not the value on year number 3. Okay, because you utilize it better, people are getting more, understand how to utilizing, doing less mistakes, and run it for more hours. So again, kind of like as a summary, we have to innovate. We're not in a situation where we can just sit from the side and do nothing and just hope for better financial outcome for our business, because it's not going to happen. And we need to utilize this technology as much as possible. We really enjoy working with our grower, building those dialogue with, whether it's a customer success team and a farm team that work closely with the growers, and making sure this technology being implemented correctly. Every day, our customers tell us how they save money that we didn't even anticipate, from reducing cost for PPE or for the training of equipment, or the guys that hit his elbow and not working for 2 weeks, and no one really counts for that. So anyways, all this benefit should be taken into account.
So just digging in on this sort of rounding the bend here on this panel here, but digging in a little bit on ROI beyond cost. And you guys both gave great examples. I mean, on the cost side, you might have to put in a bunch of infrastructure to make the tech actually work. David, you made that point. On the other benefits, Alon, you made a really interesting analogy about, generative AI, and obviously with ChatGPT, we're putting in data, and now we can upload documents. I hear it can actually use vision and read papers and things now. But ultimately, that's what these farm machinery will become: smart data collectors to train large language models. And do you guys feel that data will become a really key part of the ROI to make the technology work better and smarter? I mean, is it there yet, and is that coming? I think you alluded to it, Alon, but how are you feeling about ROI beyond cost and time is a good one you added, David, for things like data collection? Even though it might not be perfectly useful at the moment, it's going to become more and more useful. And as these solutions start to emerge, things like labor efficiency will increase because you'll start to figure out new and smarter ways to use less labor. So just any comments you have about ROI sort of beyond cost and time that you think about that are either here now or that are coming?
Yeah, sure. So data is a mean, and a good mean, to get to the results that we want, which is really high utilization that leads to really high productivity. Again, currently the farms, majority of the farms are like an offline factory. Okay, think of it like a factory in the 50s. Okay, where everyone is a manual labor, and you come to the shift, and it is what it is. Now, if you go now to a car manufacturing facility, or even this notebook facility. Everything is automated, everything is monitored specifically. You know exactly what you need, what you don't need. You can control the quality, etc., etc. And you do this with continuous collecting and analyzing data about manufacturing. And here in the farm is food processing. So I do think that now that we have those smart devices for the first time in the farm, instead of just people that maybe they remember or not, they wrote or not, they need to send reports for the DPR. Typically, it's okay what I remember that I've done. Now those machines are logging everything that we're doing, and we can analyze. And of course, those AI and big data technologies assist this dramatically to better understand where we are and where we can be and what we can do about it. Okay, again, just sharing, the majority of our growers were surprised to see their productivity or efficiency numbers for the first time, their current ones. We are overestimating our performance as human beings, okay? We're thinking that we're a great driver, and then you look at the log of your drive and you figure out that you're doing like this every day. You think that everyone in the shift been worked very consistently and your productivity is really high, again. And then you figure out, as I mentioned, hour number 7, everyone start to look at the Netflix. It's really hard with the protective gear, so you're just losing those efficiencies. So now all of a sudden you see this visibility, you have better tools to analyze, and you can decide how to attack it further and how to improve. And happily, there's also multiple solutions that you can implement. So again, it's not a cookie cutter, and you need to find the right mix of what is relevant for your farm. I think the companies, we as an ecosystem of technology provider should look very holistically and assist the growers to do the connections. We work with a lot of smart implements company, data company, farm management application company to make it a connected solution, so everything will be connected to one another. So currently, like, we try to push it, but as an ecosystem, I think we need to get better. And also, dealers. I think dealers have a really important role in this, as they're become or been the trusted advisor for the equipment, for knowledge, and we need to give them the tools to continue doing this, but as a technology base, as a precision technology solution, data-oriented, that this relationship can keep on going and be 21st century appropriate, I would say.
Anybody else want to comment on that?
Yeah, thanks, Gabe. You know, I hear the question about data and agriculture and how does that move the industry forward. And if you ask some of our growers today, they will tell you, we have more data than we know what to do with. We have some of these machines that are recording all this data, and they're trying to pump it out to us. I don't even know where to start. Where is its value? How is it bringing me a return on investment, return on innovation? How is it doing all this? From what I see, from what the growers in our membership are doing, they're trying to keep the data side a little bit at arm's length. They're, okay, we're just now getting these sensors on the equipment in the field to be able to record this data. And some growers are being very bullish on this. And I know one grower that's hired their own data scientists, and they have their own internal data storage management system. And they are creating their own internal ERP system, all these things. But these are massive infrastructure burdens that saying that a growing operation is now, you know, a data harvest facility instead of more harvesting crops. It's an interesting thing to think about. I think, you know, all the growers will say, well, if a startup provides this for me as a service or whatever, am I really going to trust them to be able to say, you know, your yields are better if you do this, if you plant broccoli over lettuce, or do this or that? Your harvests are going to be better, your yields are going to be better at this time of the year, that sort of thing. A A grower is going to look at you in the face and say, don't tell me how to farm. And don't bring your technology and tell me how to farm. That's something that Jason Gianelli said on that Modern Acre podcast, right? He said he had someone tell him that he was farming old school and he needed change. And his words, I quote, was, I was flabbergasted by that. No grower wants to be told how to farm. And that's kind of the crux of this, because you're having these startup companies trying to tell farmers how to farm from the data that's been collected off these machines. And there's a little bit of push and pull there. So, how does it land? Does a growing company start investing in data scientists in their own program? And that's a lot of overhead. Or is there a startup that does that? Is there some sort of co-op data management for this side? I make no mistake, I believe there can be some massive benefits to this, and there's a lot of low-hanging fruit to be able to solve with some of this large language models and agriculture data. It seems like a little bit too much of a mess today currently, is what my perspective is.
Yeah, I would largely agree with Ben on that point. I would add to it in just a small way by saying there's the challenge of the data, but then especially in managed irrigation systems where you're using subsurface drip and managing by the irrigation block, whether that's 11 acres or 20 acres or 120 acres, you don't have the opportunity, you don't have any levers to pull once you have all this great data and have it packaged in a way that you can actually do something with it. The yield is less in this area than it is on this area, or I need more fertility over here versus over here, or I've got a fungal problem in the middle of the field but not on the edges of the field. If you're managing by the irrigation block, which no one's advocating going away from subsurface drip, it reduces water use by 30%, it increases yield, at least in processing tomatoes, by 10+%. But our ability to manage because of fertigation and because of those irrigation blocks on a precision level just doesn't exist. So there's a gap there. Yes, it's the data. How is it packaged? How can we use it? But it's also, what are the tools in the field that we can actively utilize with that data? So I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Indiana. Yield mapping has increased corn and soybean yields by at least 6% just alone. I'm excited about that potential, but there are many barriers to getting there in specialty crops in California.
I'll add to this as the farmer on a real world example, and I can't believe I want to say this out loud, but I actually moved away from my soil moisture probes. I put a bunch of soil moisture probes in the ground, and they're very expensive. And so I placed them based on soil type on each ranch. And I realized I just was not using the data. We're gathering this data, and I say, okay, well, that's why I irrigate a whole block that has 5 different soil types. I irrigate all at once. So until I want to spend the money to start breaking up my blocks into smaller blocks, which now becomes less efficient to farm, there's an efficiency level that everyone wants to get to that makes sense with the amount of investment you make to get to that efficiency, and also how much more yield are you going to get, or whatever quality measure you're measuring, whether it's yield or phenolic ripeness or tannin, those type of things. You have to see the return on that investment in order to make it worth it in the long run when you're investing in that new technology. So yeah, I was spending so much money on the website to monitor this stuff. I just had to finally pull the plug last year because our prices in the grape industry have been plummeting. And so when it comes down to, Ellen, you're talking about labor, I actually, right now, I'm kind of disagreeing with you because I don't think the scarcity of labor is the motivating factor behind creating more efficiency. It is the reduced margin that we're operating under. So I am trying to find those ways that I can reduce my input costs to make up for the reduced price that I'm getting from my grapes. And that leads to less labor, right? So our labor in California costs a lot more than the more than the rest of the country generally in farming. And we're not talking minimum wage, because there's the minimum wage in California, and then there's the actual wage that is the going rate. And as the minimum wage goes higher, my lowest man is making about $27 an hour loaded wage. So we're trying to reduce our overhead or reduce our manpower to make up for that loss in margin that we're getting from a market that's in oversupply.
Perfect way to wrap that up with a bow. We have just a couple more minutes. I wanted to open it up to some questions in the audience. So please raise your hand with a question. Yes, sir. Yeah, get a mic just so we can hear it. Yeah, there we go.
Howdy, good afternoon, good morning. Jorge Zavala, Catholic Charities here at YOLO Solano. Here just more interested on the workforce side of things, as we do a lot of support for the farm working community, connecting with social services, workforce development opportunities, all sorts of stuff, right? So on average, this question's for Ben. For folks that have implemented this machinery, what's been the average workforce reduction? It's not 100%, down to zero, but you'd say like what, 20%, 10, 15? Because we're trying to stay lean for the margin. I totally agree with you as well. And same thing with the profit margin with not just grapes, but also almonds and pistachios, right? And pretty much it's all around. So what kind of effect is this going to have on the workforce?
Yeah, thank you. Good question. So, and remember, this is not a reduction of workforce, it's a reallocation. Every single farm that you talk to today is not, we just had to let some people go because of, we got this great innovation now. It's now this person is upskilled to do this person's now driving the tractor instead of out in the field on their knees and hands and knees pulling weeds. But specifically to talk about this labor reallocation with some innovation, in the carbon robotics case study, you'll read with Braga Fresh that they hire all domestic labor and they have all their own weeding crews, and they were able to reallocate 21 people with 2 carbon robotics machines from on your hands and knees pulling weeds out of the ground and high density spinach and mixed leafy greens to now on the harvest crew, and they're making substantially more from being from a weeding crew to a harvest crew. So there is that side of it, and it really, for someone to say that it's a removal of labor or we're taking jobs or that sort of thing, I'd say that person is a little bit uninformed to see that. Come drive around with me. I'll drive around to 100 different growing operations in a day, and you'll see that that's not the case.
And anybody else want to share? We combat this issue quite a bit, where there's a narrative where it's like, well, all this automation is going to take all these wonderful jobs away, right? We're talking about very dangerous, dirty, dull jobs in some cases that if we can make them safer, easier, better, it's our imperative to do that. So do you have any other thoughts or just even a quick story about how technology has made that happen in your worlds?
Yeah, I have an operator now that he's in charge of our autonomous tractor, and so he's the go-to person. He's working with someone else who's monitoring the tractor from Bakersfield, and they make sure the tractor goes from place to place. It is totally a reallocation of labor, but and on my family's farm, we've never fired anyone because now we don't need anyone anymore. They're always invited back, but as the workforce through normal attrition happens, we're not hiring again. So we're trying to farm more with less people. But the step further is, as these technologies come into agriculture, it gives young people a whole nother exciting way to be in ag, to be engaged with ag. And so you're going from a place where 50 years ago it was, if I want to come back to the family farm, I need to know how to drive a tractor, to if I want to come back to the family farm, I need to know how to code. And that is, to me, is really exciting. And we need to I've been working with our local high school ag program to try to kind of further this ag tech idea at a younger age, not wait for kids to lose interest in agriculture and then find it later on. You know, I want kids to go to college, the school of UC Davis, I'm an Aggie, School of Ag, and learn how to code for a tractor. You know, that's the future.
I've got one quick story. I was working at one of these ag tech companies, and there was a large grower in the area, and he called me and said, Ben, you know, my son's going to college, he's doing mechanical engineering, I'm a little bit sad he doesn't want to farm. He straight out told me he doesn't want to farm. He ended up being my intern, and he worked for me for the whole summer, and I just showed him all the stuff that we're doing and that other companies are doing and that sort of stuff. And as he was leaving, he said, Ben, you know, if I could do this type of stuff, then I'll want to farm again. You know, I'll farm, you know, the 8, 10, 12 hours a day, not the 18, 20, 24 hours that my dad is doing to run our farm. So I really see that as a benefit. That's something that it was a few years ago that happened.
And on this topic, first of all, I think thank you guys also for the Vine and everyone's here on promoting this aspect of ag tech is an important part of the future of this region, this community, this area. You know, the diversity that we have across the team, in our team and in our customer farms, in terms of old and young and women's and men, people with disabilities that are now have access to participate, have the ability to participate, is amazing. The amount of you know, people that are not required to have all this, you know, whether it's a physical ability or willingness to drive a heavy equipment, dangerous machine for 20 hours. This is the only way that you can participate in the farming activities. So it's give a lot of opportunities, and we see it from our side. So blue-white employees here in the West Coast, but even it's more interesting to see it from our customer side, on, you know, working together on how to train their people, how to make the very complex, sometimes scary technology as easy as possible. You can operate your phone, you can operate this, okay? And this is a big mission that we have, to simplify it and make it accessible for basically everyone in the farm. So then you can utilize whoever you want from the farm. It doesn't have to be the Davis graduate from agriculture science to participate in this. It could be also the existing people in the farm. So,
All right, Zach, bring us home with the panel. The last comments could be on anything like, what's the promise of the, oh, another last question. All right.
Yes, Ben, I'd like to ask you to expound a little bit, if you will, on the template that you're developing and also the process that companies need to go through if they want to have Western growers, you know, test their products.
Yeah, thanks, Warren. The template it's to be quite honest, it's a template, but it's also a learning curve. And Warren's referring to what Walt had said earlier, that if a grower wants to analyze their ROI on this ag tech equipment, the WGA is willing to help with that. We provide resources, and some of those resources are, you know, I have a very easy spreadsheet that I've just created with a bunch of formulas in it and stuff that can provide that analysis for you, for your operation with your numbers, and to provide the numbers you want to see. And a lot of that is an education for growers to understand and record all the numbers that actually just go into that spreadsheet. That's what I've seen as kind of the biggest aha moment, is that the growers actually have to understand all of those inputs that go into that spreadsheet, and then the math is very simple. It's plus and minus from what I've done previously, and do I get a payback at the end of the year? So we're providing that. We're also providing a resource to help growers and provide them with an intern or a permanent service. We're trying to figure out how all that stuff works. That's Walt's. Walt's figuring that out. And as far as how you can reach out to us, I believe the email is just innovation@wga.com. Just send us an email and say you're interested in the template or someone to come alongside you and help you. And as long as you're a member of the WGA, we'll help you out.
Okay, I was going to end it there, but Mark Mason wants to ask a question. I can't deny him. But anyone else, you got to come up and talk to us afterwards. But Mark Mason, last question. You got the floor.
Thank you, Gabe. Nice panel. You guys did a great job. So question I have is, so I work for a farming company in Salinas, so we farm fresh vegetables. So you could have the best tech in the world. ROIs are great. Implementation is the challenge, 100%. So just a comment, if you guys could maybe tell me some of your best ideas on how you would implement some of this stuff, because that's what we run into, is that, again, it's the best thing since sliced bread, but nobody wants to use it, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Oh, just sir, open it up another hour conversation with that one. All right, give a quick answer to that one, and we can talk over lunch about the rest.
Mark, great question. It comes down to how do you actually use it in the field? How is it practical? How does it work for your operation? I'm just going to give a quick example of these automated planters that I talked about. What the growers who have purchased this equipment in processing tomatoes have figured out is, unless they have a dedicated employee, and maybe that employee does something else for 9 months, but for the 3 months that they're planting, unless they have someone dedicated to that equipment, that technology, they are going to park it and they're not going to get payback on it. So you've got to hire somebody, and that's a barrier, especially to a smaller operation. And that's just how this has worked in many of these. I don't know that that's the case for all of them, but in most of them, you have to hire somebody that's upskilled. That's my answer.
I can share with our experience. First of all, typically when you need someone to be a point of contact that has a bit more attention that he can pay to and have this ongoing conversation. Probably the first thing to do is setting expectations, setting the right expectations about what this is, how it's gonna be implemented, how we're gonna get this value throughout time, set quick and easy wins, I would say, also to get buying in the organization. Maybe someone paid, signed the check, but still there's a lot of people that, they're not really familiar and want to see what is it about before they're getting more and more engaged. And at least from us, from the provider side, as an approach, we are not saying, hey, here is the robot, here is the manual, good luck, because it doesn't work. And also, your utilization, correct utilization, this is our success. Because you will be happy and you'll get a new one and tell your neighbor. And this is for the group of vendor here, we do need to put the extra effort and resources and attention to support this correct implementation in the farm. Every farm is a bit different. Every business have a different needs, and work together on how to get there. We have a couple of guys that we even assist them to hire people, and things like that. So it could be a wide range of things, but this is definitely a really important topic to align before you decide that you're gonna go on something.
Mark, you and I have talked about this specifically. I'll spare that conversation for another day. The way I've seen it in big operations is that you essentially have an internal service department. You hire or you get people from your organization and say you are now an internal service for your farm. And you are, call it a weeding or spraying or whatever your ag tech is. Grimway does it great with Jarrett Riley. Jarrett's fantastic. Jarrett is just an automated services provider for their entire farm. The ranch manager will just call Jarrett and say, hey, I need 6 laser weeders out here in organic carrots tomorrow. and he'll go out and do it. So that allows him to have his own operators, his own people that he trains, and all the companies will train. And he's using, Eco Robotics on their smart sprayer. It's fantastic. They're also using Carbon Robotics laser weeder. They're using an automated thinner from, I can't remember the name of the company, but so they just have an internal ag tech service provider, and they do that. TNA does the same thing with Luis, and Luis is a fantastic story. He started as a hoeing crew, and he was on a hoeing crew. He saw an early version of a weeding machine come out, a Robovator, and he took to that thing like a moth to a flame, said, I really want to be a part of this, and now he's the manager that actually runs a whole fleet of 6 or 8 of them at Tanamere and Antle. So you're going to have people in your organization that want to gravitate to that, and I just give them the keys and say, figure it out, and give them a responsibility for it. And if you couple that with someone that has to be around the machinery all the time, that's the biggest thing. Instead of saying, okay, we're going to move this thing from ranch to ranch, and now you just need to find somebody to run it, you need to have dedicated people to look after it, take care of it, and utilize it correctly.
I'll just add that, your story of Luis is, we find that on so many farms. I've got a similar story about Enrique, who's now managing our shop. And but you got to find those people, and then don't be afraid to let them run with it, and you give them the keys, like you said. I mean, that is how we've done it with our autonomous tractor. And honestly, it took me a little bit to give away the keys, because I was the one in charge. And as soon as I gave away the keys, all of a sudden the adoption was so much better, and everyone said, okay, now we know this tractor is being run by not the guy who the big boss, is being run by someone who actually knows what's going on out there day to day, and then it actually gets adopted faster. So don't be afraid to give away the keys. I like that a lot.
All right, well, that concludes our panel today. But stay tuned for the next Vine Connect event, Implementation of Ag Tech in the Real World, hosted by Mark Mason. But seriously, folks, please give a warm round of applause for our panelists today. Thank you very much. So please enjoy some lunch, continue your networking. Thank you for all coming today and sticking to the end.